All right, everyone, welcome. It's now 12 p.m. in a very snowy and cold Waterloo, Ontario. Thank you very much for joining us today for our informational webinar for the Graduate Diploma in Climate Risk Management in the Faculty of Environment at the University of Waterloo. My name is Christina Pope. I am the Graduate Studies Marketing and Recruitment Specialist and the host for today's session. I'm joined today by faculty, staff, and alumni who will share their knowledge and experience with the Graduate Diploma in Climate Risk Management, which we often refer to as a GDIP in CRM. There will be information on the program structure, student experience, and admissions requirements. We'll end the webinar with a Q&A session with questions from you, our audience. A couple of important housekeeping items before we proceed. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be distributed by email to all registrants about 24 hours after the webinar concludes. This email will also include any important links that we talk about today. For the Q&A session, as an attendee at this webinar, you cannot unmute your microphone or share your screen, but we encourage you to ask questions by using the Q&A box. You can also upvote other people's questions that you would like answered. We may not get to every question and we'll be prioritizing questions we feel benefit the broadest audience. And if your question is not answered during the webinar, we have the Q&A chat history saved, and we can always follow up with you one-on-one for anyone that we missed. Our first presenter today will be Dr. Wesley Van Wychen, who is the director of the CRM program and whose research focuses on remote sensing of the cryosphere and oceans, geospatial data management, and historical climate data rescue. We're also joined by Teresa Wilson, who's the program administrator, who will be hopping on during the Q&A portion when we need her expertise and guidance. And we're also joined today by Jean-Michel, who's a recent alum of the CRM GDIP program, who will tell us a bit about their experience in the program and what he's up to now. So to begin, the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land granted to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is coordinated within the Office of Indigenous Relations. The University of Waterloo was the first university in Canada to offer Indigenous application fee and tuition waivers, which are available to incoming and current students who are members of the Mississaugas of the First Credit or Six Nations of the Grand River. And to place a little bit of context for the climate risk management program, it's situated in the Department of Geography and Environmental Management, which is within the Faculty of Environment. The Faculty of Environment is the largest Faculty of Environment in Canada, and our vision is to be at the forefront of environmental research, education, and innovation, where working with the world for the world drives transformative change for people and the planet. And just one example of how we do this is our LEED Platinum certified building, Environment 3, which is one of the buildings that the Faculty of Environment, faculty, staff, and students work in. And it was the first LEED Platinum building on an Ontario campus. And with that, I will hand it over to Wesley.
Okay, hi everyone. It's very glad to see so many people joining and to learn a little bit about the climate risk management graduate diploma. And so again, the GDIP in climate risk management is situated within the University of Waterloo's Faculty of Environment. And it really is, I would say, the focus of the faculty environment and our commitment to climate change research and sustainability research across all of our different faculty members. And so we're a really excellent location and venue for this type of diploma. So what is the Diploma in Climate Risk Management? Well, it really is developed for mid-career professionals who are interested in kind of building up their climate risk management, their climate change understanding. Maybe you're midway through your kind of professional career and you are interested in moving into the climate space or climate risk space, or you've already moved into that area and you want to gain some fundamental knowledge about the climate risk that's associated with climate change. this is meant to give you that background understanding of the problem. Because this is really targeted for mid-career professionals, it is offered fully part-time and online. And by online, I mean the offerings are also asynchronous. So you can fit it into your schedule depending on, you don't have to be logging on at a specific time to interact with the course. They're all developed so that you can do it on your own time. So if your work schedule or your life schedule just doesn't allow you to participate in a course at a specific time, that's not a problem for this program. So next slide, Christina. So just kind of reviewing what I just mentioned, it's all course-based, it's online, asynchronous, so that you can fit it into your lifestyle, into your work schedule, into your life schedule as you see fit. It's designed to be completed in 16 months of part-time study, fully online, so no need to come to Waterloo, but you get access to all of the coursework developed by people associated with the University of Waterloo. So you're getting the high quality coursework that we teach here, but the ability to access it where you are. So in terms of just some structure and some administration, myself, I am an associate professor in the Department of Geography and Environmental Management. My research and my teaching focuses on teaching students research methods associated with climate change. And my role within the climate risk management diploma is that I'm your point contact for anything related to the academic aspects of the program. So if you have fundamental questions about courses or need decisions made about whether a course could be swapped out one for another, I'm the kind of person that does that. Teresa Wilson, who is also on the call and is available for your question, deals with the administrative side. So paperwork that you would fill out for courses that then eventually comes to me all goes through Teresa. Teresa is also just a wonderful resource in terms of understanding how the program actually works tangibly day to day. So you might be interested, okay, so what does this program actually look like? So you're required to get 4 courses from the following list, and all students would be required to take the GEMCC 600 Fundamentals of Climate Change course. So that course is providing students with kind of the baseline understanding so that you understand the physical basis of climate change. You can understand the scientific challenges, the challenges the world faces related to climate change. You get prepared with the scientific underpinnings. So you really go into how do we know that the climate is actually changing? It also provides students with an introduction to the adaptation efforts that are going on related to climate change, as well as the mitigation efforts. So how things like carbon reduction or low carbon transitions, those are things that are starting to be introduced within this class. And the point of this class is to make sure that everyone who's coming in terms of the program has this basic level of understanding of climate change as an issue and the issues that we face related to climate change. So I will note that you can, let's say that you have some training already in climate change, you have what you feel is a sufficient understanding of climate change already. You can request that you not have to take GEMCC 600 and then take an additional one of the other courses, provided that you can demonstrate that you have an equivalent competency of what would be required. So in that sense, what you could do is develop an argument to say, okay, I've learned about all of these different types of things, and then present it to me in a written form. And then I make a decision if that would count as a relevant kind of equivalent understanding of climate change. But that does mean that you then just take a different course within the package of courses that you see below. Okay, so you're still always taking 4 courses within the stream. Just to speak very briefly to each one of the courses, GEMCC 620 Climate Data and Analytics, that's a course that I typically teach. In that course, what we do is we actually learn where do we go to obtain climate data? How do we analyze climate data? How do we effectively communicate what we find, the information that we can pull from climate data? And so you learn things like a basic introduction to climate models, to reanalysis products, to where do you go to get data for air temperatures from this Canadian city, or how do I understand and pull data in terms of future projections of what climate might be like in Vancouver or in Waterloo. So that's the type of thing that we learn in that class. GEMCC 644, that's really looking at the climate change issue through the lens of health systems. So how will climate change impact human health in the future? How are we going to adapt to that? What are the strategies that we can put in place to make sure that people can still maintain a healthy lifestyle within this changing environment that we're in? GEMCC 650 takes a more business look, so looking at the impacts of um, climate change on business plans. How do we plan kind of climate change business economics into the future? How do we look at the regulatory landscape from the province, from the federal level, from municipal levels, and integrate that into business decisions? Climate change and community planning, GEMCC 652. That course is really looking at how do we integrate climate change into the planning of our future cities. What are they going to look like? What do we need to think about in terms of mitigating, adapting to climate change as we build out infrastructure into the future? And the last class, GEMCC 660, is carbon accounting and management. And this is a very tangible course where you learn the skills of in a greenhouse gas environment, how do you account for methane, for carbon that is emitted into the atmosphere? How do you account for how much carbon should be included in inventories, for example? How effective are things like carbon removal techniques in terms of the accounting processes for that? And so this course is actually taught by people who are working in the carbon accounting and management field every day in their professional lives. So everything is completely up to date in terms of what carbon accounting and management looks like through the lens of practitioners working in environmental assessments. And so the coursework is developed specifically with climate change at the heart of the issue. It's developed by instructors who are actively working in the field, either through an academic position here at the university or through practitioners who are experts in the space. And so for you as an interested student in the program, you're going to be learning about all these different things, these diverse topics in climate change, but really led by instructors who are at the forefront of the work. So with that, Christina, perhaps the next slide. I can turn it back over to Christina.
Yeah, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the types of people that take the CRM program and where they are after they graduate. So based on information from LinkedIn, when we look at where our alumni are employed, we can see that it's a variety of sectors. So sectors include public administration on the federal and local levels, grant making and civic organizations like the United Nations, and professional and scientific and technical services. So that includes environmental and engineering consulting firms. And other alums also work in a variety of other sectors, which just shows how applicable this diploma could be for a number of different sectors. So anything including utilities, insurance, and construction. And we're actually joined today by an alum of the CRM program to talk a little bit about his experience in the program. So, Jean-Michel, if you wanted to come on in and talk a little bit about why you chose the program and what you're up to now.
Can you hear me clearly, Christina?
Yep, I can. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So I was invited today to just give um, a recap of some of my experience, give some perspectives why I chose the program, where I saw value, and so on, to see if it could be of help to prospective students. So just to walk you through some of my background and where I was before I took the program, I my original training is as a mechanical engineer, which I did many years ago now. And at the time I had chosen the program, I had already had quite a bit of experience, about 9, 10 years in a utility environment. So supporting the development of sustainable energy projects for a utility in a Caribbean country. And then a few years before I took the program, I had shifted to a regional center that implements sustainable energy projects as well and supports countries in the Caribbean with implementation of sustainable energy. So that was my background, and it also ties into some of my motivations for taking the program because from my days at the utility, though I was primarily dealing with renewable energy projects and maybe not climate strictly, there was always a climate perspective, and it was becoming a bigger and bigger thing, whether it be looking at the benefits of the implementation of some of these projects to looking at the risks the projects would face. It was just it had a growing sphere of influence on all the work we did. And I had a little bit of background in it, but I wouldn't say it was a strong background at the time. And then when I moved to my current employer, so the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, I specifically started working on long-term planning that incorporated climate risk. And in that, that's when I realized I really needed something that would bolster my background and allow me to be able to be more effective in my role. So the thing about it as an engineer, I wasn't necessarily the one dealing with some of the climate aspects or even some of the hazard assessments, vulnerability assessments, and risk, but we worked very closely with experts who did. And even in that, there's tremendous value in being able to collaborate. You need to be able to sort of speak the same language, and that was something that was very difficult in the beginning. So these are some of my motivations for pursuing the program. Why Waterloo specifically? My first degree was actually done in Canada, so at Ryerson, now Metropolitan University. And I still have familial ties to Canada, so it was kind of a no-brainer to start looking in Canada initially. Waterloo, interestingly, had been one of the places I looked at for my undergrad before I started, so it had always been on my radar. I think the school has an excellent reputation, and my two other criteria when I started looking, besides being in Canada, was, well, three. One, being able to take it while I work. Two, actually being strong academically. I wanted a solid foundation, not just a credential. But three, I wanted my credential to reflect an institution of some renown that was well known and well considered in the field. So I actually made a short list, but Waterloo rose to the top, and I think this checked all my boxes. I was able to do it while I worked, um, and all the criteria that I had set up, it 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 hit the mark. So there's one additional thing I'll say at the end of my comments, which is also something to keep in mind, particularly for international students if you're thinking of joining. My experience in the program. So I won't spend too much time on this, but if I think nowadays remote or online courses are becoming really common. So I would say in terms of the structure, I've done a number of them now. I'm pursuing another master's online, and the Waterloo program, the structure, the facilitation, how the course is delivered, everything worked out really well. I don't have any negative comments around that. Very pleased with how it worked. I think the biggest thing for prospective students is to consider how you'll integrate it into your workload and into your work. So if you are continuing to work and you do pursue this part-time, this can be really challenging to consider. And I think more than anything else, because as I said from the Waterloo end, I think the delivery is excellent. You have to really give some thought as to how you can make this work while you work. And any advice here, I'd say this isn't something that you message for my connection, Christina, just making sure I'm still coming across clearly.
Yeah, you're coming across a little bit garbled, but not too bad.
Okay. Any better?
Yep. Yeah,
Oh,
try that.
okay. Alrighty. So the yeah, I was saying if this is something that work is not supporting directly and financially, I would strongly consider letting work know that you're pursuing this. The hourly commitment for doing the program and doing it well, maybe a little bit more than you anticipate. And I think the only way to get the best out of this program is by ensuring you can commit enough hours to it. Obviously, there's just the regular balance aspect of ensuring you can dedicate enough hours. But to be honest, if you feel crunched doing this program, I don't think you will derive the benefits from it that you anticipate because you just won't be able to take full advantage of all the assignments and engagement and everything that's required, I think, to get the best out of it. So how have I been using this since I finished? Making any kind of one-to-one mapping is really difficult to say, okay, I use this course for this particular task. It's a lot more fluid, but I would say I definitely notice the benefits in the work I'm already doing. So as mentioned, we have developed long-term power sector plans for countries in the Caribbean, and in that we still work very closely with colleagues in the Caribbean who look at climate risk, who look at climate change and the effects on installations and energy systems. And then also we look at always tie everything into the benefits for climate change mitigation and all aspects of climate change. So I would say it strengthened my ability to deal with colleagues. And all four of the courses that I took, so just so you can situate my comments, I ended up taking um, let's go back to the list. So I took fundamentals, I took climate data and analytics, I took climate change and community planning, and I took carbon accounting and management. And all of these have contributed to the way I work and enhance the work I've been doing. It really now, if I had to quantify the benefits, I'd say like questions around climate data that goes into our work is better. Questions around how we can frame things in terms of dealing with stakeholders who are not so familiar has been enhanced. The usefulness of outputs, we really have to craft outputs in advance to ensure that they're applicable and beneficial. And as part of our plans are speaking to how we can enhance the resilience of power systems, you need to be able to ensure that everything that's going into that is going to result in an output that's useful to the people on the other end. And that's been enhanced. And then lastly, something I didn't really expect, but some of the theory has really benefited me. And I got a lot of that in the community planning and climate change class. So there's been benefits across the board. But I'm still focused on the same work. It's just I'm better equipped, I would say, to do that work. And just to close, so they asked if I had any general advice that prospective students might find valuable. Again, I'm reinforcing something I said a while ago, but there are clear benefits to be derived in the program. I do think it's a really valuable program. I've benefited from it, but think in advance. Number one, can you allocate the time? And then if you do think you can allocate the time, think very consciously about your approach to participation and engaging in the coursework. It can be easy to float through the course thinking about the credential. I don't think you'd maximize the benefits of this program by doing so. Like some of the stuff actually, and maybe I can talk about it more in Q&A, but I don't want to drill on too long right now. But there's some exercises that took a little bit longer, could probably be done easier now, thinking of AI and so on, but you would not get the benefit of wrangling with some of these issues. The point I was going to mention a while ago, as an international student, consider the fee structure. I'd hand over to Therese on the team. They may be able to speak better about this than me, but I would say I actually benefited from the fact that this is delivered and charged by semester. So I specifically structured my program to take two courses per semester, and that benefited me because there's a semester fee for this program. So as an international student, these are things you really consider because how you structure the program it can make it more financially sustainable for you. But obviously, if you're going to stretch this across 2 years, it's going to be more expensive. And last, don't skip GEM-CC 600. I know Wesley noted that you can get a waiver of that. Honestly, it was a tremendously valuable course, and I'd say it was a good refresh for me. I'd done some climate change studies, and I use it in my work. It was a good foundation for the program because if you're not really primed into the issues and current manifestations of these issues, I don't think the other courses you'll be able to derive as much benefit. And three, it gives you a chance to grapple with some of the material in a practical way. So hand back over to you, Christina, and I'm open for any questions.
Awesome. I'm sure, thank you so much. And I'm sure there's going to be some of our viewers today that'll have some questions for you during the Q&A session. So perfect. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. All right, I'll hop on to some of the logistics for the admissions. So for admissions into the Climate Risk Management Diploma, you're required to have a 4-year honors bachelor's degree or equivalent in any humanities, social science, health, engineering, science discipline. We admit to the Climate Risk Management program from a variety of backgrounds, and that list is not exhaustive. So we've had individuals from all backgrounds join the program, and if you have any questions about your particular background, you can always get in contact with us. You must have an overall average of at least 75%. If you're applying with transcripts from Canadian institutions, that average is calculated from your last 2 years of study. And if you're applying with transcripts outside of Canada, that average is calculated from your overall average. You're required to submit 2 letters of reference who can speak to your experience and qualifications for the climate risk management program. These can be from academic or professional sources. And note that your referees should be using their professional or institutional email addresses because it makes it easier for us to verify their identity when they're completing their reference form. You will have to submit a CV or a resume, and you'll also be uploading a statement of interest where you will explain more about who you are and why you belong in the program. And all graduate students at the University of Waterloo must meet minimum admission standards and a proof of English language proficiency. So if you're an international student, you may need to submit a proof of English language proficiency, which I'll talk about in 2 slides. And applying to the University of Waterloo is a completely online process. So you set up your online account with a username and password, and that's where you can log in and start your application. And you would select your program of interest and input your personal information, so your previous institutional history, and along with your referee information. And that's also where you would pay your non-refundable application fee of $150 Canadian per program. So a note that that fee is per program. Your referees will then receive an email from the University of Waterloo. And in that email will be a link to a secure and confidential online reference form. And they'll also receive 2 email reminders before the application deadline, which are sent automatically through our application portal. You also have the ability through the application portal to send email reminders to your referees should they need it. If you're applying to multiple programs and are using the same referees, just a note that they will complete their references separate, since references are confidential and not shared between programs. So it's important that your referee is aware of that. And then if you, some information for our international students, if you're wondering how the academic requirements translate into your country's grading system, we do have a list of international admissions equivalencies on our website, and it will be one of the links that I will include with the webinar recording. And those are broken down by country or system of study. It's a helpful guideline. It doesn't guarantee admission, but it helps you see whether or not you meet the minimum admissions requirements. And to the topic of the English language proficiency, we have several accepted ELP tests, including the TOEFL and IELTS. Just remember that scores are only valid for 2 years from the test date, and we recommend you complete your test at least 2 months before the application deadline in order for the test scores to reach us in time. There are exceptions to providing an ELP test score. So 2 examples include if you've completed 3 or more years of post-secondary education at a Canadian institution or university, or if you've completed a graduate degree at a Canadian university. There are also others listed on the website, and that will be one of the links that I will include in the email. So tuition for the climate risk management program is assessed per term, and it's different depending on your residency. So the first value in that equation is your tuition fee. The second value is the incidental fees that you're charged, and then we've rounded the tuition just to give you a guideline of what to expect in terms of charges. These values, like I said, are per term and they're in Canadian dollars. Incidental fees are quite low for an online part-time program. As you can see, it's $50, but these do cover mandatory student services fees. And one thing that I don't know whether or not we mentioned yet, but the climate risk management program is open for admission 3 times a year. So you can start the program in September, January, or May. So depending on when you're hoping to join the program, there are different application deadlines. So February 1st is the deadline for those who want to start in September, June 1st for January of the following year, and October 1st for May of the following year. And just some tips and tricks on applying. We look at your application as a whole. So when we don't start assessing your application for admission until your application is marked as complete. When you go into the application portal, there's a helpful checklist to tell you what documents you still need to upload, including your transcripts and your statement of interest. So once everything is marked as complete, that's when we will start taking a look at you as an applicant. It's important to select your references carefully and ones who can speak to your competency and who can prove that you would be a great match for the program. And also, it's very important for you to select references who are aware of the deadlines that you need to meet, and they've communicated with you that that's an acceptable deadline for them to get their references to us on time. And your statement of interest is an opportunity to highlight your achievements and abilities, explain why you want to enroll, your goals that you want from the climate risk management program, and why you think you're a good candidate and a good fit. So definitely give yourself a lot of time to complete that component of the application, which also leads to the next bullet point, which is to give yourself a lot of time to apply and to get your application package in order. So we recommend at least 2 weeks, but honestly, we find 4 weeks is probably better ahead of the application deadline. And that just ensures that you have all of your supporting documents ready to go. And it also gives your referees a little bit of breathing room as well. So really just give it the time and attention that it deserves. And of course, if you have any questions, Teresa is an extremely valuable resource and available for questions through her email address. And of course, through the Q&A session that we have, I think starting right now. Yes, that's it. All right, so that concludes the presentation portion of the webinar, and we can jump right into the Q&A. I see that we've had a couple of questions that have come in during the presentation, which is great. The first question, I actually had to Google what it meant, so my apologies. So someone said, is AI and like the agentic layer as a tool incorporated into these courses? So I actually had to look up what agentic layer means, and my understanding was that like using AI to perform tasks automatically. So Wesley, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about like how AI is integrated into curriculum. I'm just going to throw it over to you.
So the way that AI may or may not be integrated into any particular course is based on the instructor's discretion. So for some courses, AI might be appropriate and it might be taught in the course. In others, it might be less applicable. So what I would suggest is if you are kind of really interested in AI, kind of look at the course descriptions and think where might it fit and where might it not fit, and then try to dig a little bit deeper into those individual courses. But I don't know off of the top of my head exactly where AI lands in a particular course.
Sounds good. And then we had a question that I'll send over to actually Jean-Michel. They wanted to know how many hours per week on average would you say like the program took of your time? And I know you did mention that you were taking 2 courses per term, but maybe you could talk a little bit about like how much a person could expect if they were taking the program 1 course per term.
Christina, a little bit of breakup there. That was for me, right? The question on hours per week on average.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, just get back in. All right. That one's a little hard. This isn't always people don't always like, but it really does depend, to be honest with you. Um, it depends on the course, it depends on the assignments, and it depends on, I guess, to what level you want to engage with them. Um, I mean, having taken a few online courses and so on, I would say it also depends on your course workload, but per course, I don't know, I wouldn't imagine, in addition to the time you take to review the material, allocating less than 3 to 5 hours. I don't think you'd get anywhere. I think that's bare minimum, actually. And especially with assignments, note there are a number of writing assignments, so technical writing assignments. So you'd have to interrogate and go through an issue or answer questions after having assessed an issue on both sides of an issue. That does take time. There's literature review. Sometimes you're submitting an early stage outline, then you're going through your paper and critically assessing. That does take time. So I don't know, it might even be closer to 8 to 10 hours to be actually fair. And then some of the courses you have to do plans. So I'm thinking of like the climate change accounting. I remember we had to do accounting and management. You have to do um, contrived plans, I suppose, make your own plans for certain cities and urban areas. And there's a lot of reading in climate change and community planning. Wesley, I think, taught the climate data course, and that also depends on your familiarity with data. That one is a little easier for me, but because of my typical work, but no less intensive in terms of hours. So sorry, I can't dial it in, but I'd say, I mean, be wary of thinking you can allocate any less than an additional 5 hours after having gone through all the material, probably closer to 8 to 10.
Yep, that sounds great. And someone was asking a question about the courses. So GEM 600 versus GEM 660, are they seen as separate courses? And Wesley, I believe they are two separate
Yeah,
courses.
those are two separate courses. Because GEMCC 600 is meant to provide kind of an overview, like in that course, you might be briefly introduced to some of the topics that are going to be discussed in your other classes that are more in depth, like carbon accounting and management. But those are two distinct courses.
Great. And we had a question where someone asked if it's possible to complete the program, and I think they're trying to say in 12 months, as opposed to 16 months. So if they took like one course in their first semester, and then in their second semester, they would take two courses. So I don't know, Teresa, if you had experience with students taking more than one course. I know we talked about it a little bit, but anything you want to add?
Definitely. Jean-Michel mentioned that the course structure is set up that you pay fees per term. And so basically, you could take two courses. There's usually two courses for this particular program offered each term. So you could technically, it was designed to take one course per term over those 16 months or 4 terms, but you could definitely double up on courses and take two courses per term. Take one course, one term, as they were suggesting, then two courses, then one course. Each term you will be paying your term fee, but it's based on a term, not on the number of courses you take. So if you accelerate and complete the program by taking extra courses, you can definitely reduce the cost of the overall diploma.
Great, thank you very much. But then, of course, taking into account the fact that that's going to take more time out of your day. So, depending on what your lifestyle is, whether or not you can accommodate two graduate level courses in your work schedule and your life schedule is something to take into account. And then we had a question on whether or not, so if the GDIP is relevant for professionals in the public health sector, and whether or not we have any alum working in federal or provincial health organizations. Um, when I looked through the LinkedIn data just yesterday, I don't remember seeing anyone from health. Now, that's not to say it isn't relevant, and I don't know, Wesley, if you have anything you kind of want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I do think It certainly is relevant for people in health. I mean, we do have a dedicated course titled Climate Resilient Canadians and Health Systems. So I think very relevant in that case. Even in my class in climate data and analytics, we tackle some things like future heat days and things like this, which have impacts for human health. So I do certainly think that it's relevant if you're in the health space, but interested in how does climate change, impact that in the future. I certainly think there's relevant content for you.
And just as an interesting point, the course instructor for the health course does work for the Government of Canada in the health field.
In that
Yeah,
space. And so
in that
again,
space. Yeah.
this kind of comes back to what I was trying to emphasize is that you are working and getting instruction from people who really are experts in their particular domain that they're teaching. So as a student coming through this program, you do get access to really great kind of instructors and their knowledge through this program.
Amazing. And you know what? After you were answering that question, I realized that I think I left out one piece of information from the alumni slide. So I'm just going to say it now. Some of the job titles that I found from LinkedIn that might be relevant for people. Some of the common ones I saw were policy analysts, policy advisors, like senior directors of their departments, ESG analysts, and the head of ESG departments, and investment officers and technicians. So just to kind of show you the breadth of people who have taken the program and are in the workplace. It's really quite varied because obviously climate change and climate risk impacts everyone. And then the last question that we have in the Q&A box right now is whether or not you can pay tuition in installments. So my understanding is that you can't, that tuition is paid one time during for the courses, but I don't know, Teresa, if you know of
You're
installment.
correct.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what I thought. Okay. And there are no other questions in the Q&A box at this time, so I'll just wait for 2 more seconds before I start starting my like goodbye spiel, because typically we have at least like one or two come in, but just a reminder that the webinar recording will be sent out no more than 24 hours after we're done today, and I'll include web links that have the admissions requirements, have the course structure for the GDIP, and all of the web links for information for our international students. And it looks like we're not getting any other questions coming in, which is great. So hopefully we've given you the information that you need to learn more about the climate risk management program. So we look forward to answering any questions that you have if you want to connect with us at another time. I wanted to thank the presenters today for sharing their knowledge and expertise and experience with the Climate Risk Management Program. And we look forward to assessing your application and seeing you in the virtual classroom in the coming terms. So thank you very much.